In the process of international trade settlements, relevant parties are dealing with documents, not goods. Banks will generally pay against documents. Exporters will only receive payment by delivering required documents. Importers will only make payments upon documents. In all documents are evidence for the exporter to fulfill the sales contract. To the importer, documents are representation of the goods and are evidence for the importer to make payments. Finally, documents also act as financing collaterals in international trade. Therefore, we can say documents are at the heart of all forms of international payments. It is therefore essential to have a good knowledge of the function of different kinds of documents, their usage, as well as the specific problems that may possibly arise when handling them. The documents called for by a payment method will differ somewhat according to the nature of transaction goods and the countries of importer and exporter. Some documents, however, such as commercial invoice, bills of lading, and insurance documents, are basic and required in all circumstances. Some other documents, such as packing list, certificate of origin, inspection certificate, cable copy, and so on, depend on specific requirements in trade. Next, we'll turn to commercial documents used in international settlements. We'll illustrate those basic documents and additional documents one by one in details. First, let's look at one of the basic documents, commercial invoice. A commercial invoice is the key accounting document describing the commercial transaction between the buyer and the seller, which gives details of the goods, services, price, quantity, settlement terms, and shipment. We can say, compared to the commercial invoices used in national trade, the commercial invoices used in international trade are much more complicated and embody more elements. The more complicated commercial invoice is due to the multiple functions it play in international trade? In international trade, commercial invoice is the evidence for the importer to check goods and make payments. It should include the following items: the name and addresses of the importer and exporter, descriptions of goods and shipping details. Commercial invoice needn't be signed unless the sales contract or letter of credit requires. According to UCP 600, a commercial invoice must appear to have been issued by the beneficiary and made out in the name of applicant in the same currency as the credit. The description of goods, services, or performances in a commercial invoice must correspond with the appearing in the credit. Next is an example for invoice in international settlements. For your reference, this invoice was issued by the exporter, here, Dongguan Zhongyu Electronics Corporation, and among those items, the most important one is trade term. Here, the trade term is CIF, New York. Besides, under some special circumstances, there are other types of invoices. First, customs invoice. Customs invoice is prepared for exporter by the exporter for the importing customs to ascertain the original price and the place of imported goods. The main purpose of this invoice is used by the importing customs to determine whether the exporter is carrying out dumping. The second one is consular invoice. Consular invoice is an invoice covering a shipment of goods certified in the country of export by a local consul of the country for which the merchandise is destined. Consular invoice acts as an import license. It's used as a trade protectionism method. Similarly, the second invoice, legalized invoice, is similar to consular invoice. It is required by some countries, particularly by those in the Middle East. Here, commercial invoice must be stamped and signed by the importing country's embassy or consulate in the exporting country, so as to become a legalized invoice. The last one is performer invoice. Performer invoice is a predecessor of commercial invoice. It is issued by the exporter to estimate the goods to be exported in the future. This invoice can be used by the importer to ask for import license or the issuance of letter of credit in his own country.